Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Ellipsis TBS. We have a deck profile today from the CGU 1K. I think it's Computer Gaming Universe is the shop that ran it. Today with me, we have teammate Sam Martinez. Say hello, Sam.
Hello.
Who played Ferocious Strike Super Saiyan Son Goku. You know, that leader that everyone kind of forgets about in set 10 for some reason?
Yep. It's pretty good. I don't know why nobody's playing it.
I think that's because Green, at least this deck has a high skill ceiling that a lot of people just don't really have. Also, because it's just a monetary thing, right? Like you have
Sure.
some expensive shit in here.
Yeah, this deck is not cheap. That's fair. But it is really good if you have all the cards. Um it's one of the best strategies in the game right now, if not the best one. It certainly felt like the right one to take for me, where it had like no matchups where it was certainly unfavored. Which is pretty good. That's kind of all you can ask for.
All right, so let's dive into the deck. Let's talk about this first card here. You got 4 copies of Metacooler, Terrifying Horde.
Yeah. This is sort of the reason why I play green. This card's amazing. Might be the best unison in the game. Does pretty much everything. It creates tokens to address your opponent's unison. It fixes your hand with discarding the stuff you want in the graveyard and drawing 2 new cards. And it can be something of a finisher with the -4 to make 3 tokens. So yeah, it's kind of a ridiculous card. I try to summon it every turn 3. And yeah.
That makes sense. Listen, this card is, yeah, I agree with you. It's probably the best one, which is saying a lot, though, because Green has a lot of bonkers ass fucking unisons. So like the next one, SS Bardock Paternal Unison.
Yeah, so I only played 3 of this one because I'm trying to summon Metacooler on every turn 3, so this one was just going to leave the board a lot. But it is still very good. It lets you awaken if the blockers can't get you there, or if you open with a super combo or something like that. It's really good against yellow as well, removing apes from the combo. It was good against Vegex, but Bibbidi was nerfed for this event, so it didn't really matter there. The -3 never came up for me in the event because it was leaving my board on turn 3 every time, but it is also a good effect.
Okay. So question about your unisons. Why didn't you play Demigra at all?
Well, I turn 1, I was almost always trying to summon a blocker or a super combo, so Demigrad wasn't good there. And turn 2, if I was summoning a unison, it was always going to be Bardock, and on turn 3, I was always going to summon Metacooler. So Demigrad never really fit into the curve, and I thought that the ability to activate Frieza earlier didn't matter too much, and neither did the taking the life from it, because I was going to awaken with most of my life most of the time.
Okay, makes sense to me. And so next up, you had 3 copies of the Supreme Kai of Time, Time Regulator, which is the 1-drop blocker that draws a card when you play it.
Yeah, it's just one of your ways to awaken as soon as a card is KO'd. So this one replaces itself. That's pretty cool.
Cool. And then you had 2 copies of what's potentially my favorite card from Draftbox 5, which is Hasty Dispatch Dispo.
Yeah, it wasn't great. I usually had creatures on
No.
the board, but it's really good if you're playing with Bardock, and it can be good if you mill it turn 1 to get a blocker. Those are really the only applications where it came up.
That's fair.
Again, it wasn't great.
So talk to me about the next card. So like most people, when I see this deck profile, only play one, but you played 2 copies of For the Greater Good.
Yeah, so I kind of valued having a real negate a little bit more. It's good against Gotenks, and it's really good against Invoker, obviously. Um, and I kind of just always wanted to have it in my drop so that I always had access to a negate. Um, yeah, I was also particularly worried about Invoker. It was a really good choice for this tournament. Um, so it felt good to have another one in my main deck. It was sort of a last minute choice. It was one in the main for a long time, but I didn't regret it. I used 2 very often.
Cool. And then the other 1-drop blocker that you played was Cyberman.
This one really overperformed. I wish I played more. Um, I also played the Gohan, and that card was terrible, so that's part of why. Um, yeah, there were a lot of people that were summoning 1-drops on turn 1, and especially in like games 2 and 3, they would put in Black Mass Saiyan or something similar for this deck. And if they summon a Cyberman into it, it kind of negates the value of their card. Um, yeah, so I certainly wish I played more of that. I wouldn't, because Gohan was real bad.
That's fair. I was gonna say, the next up, Dormant Potential Unleashed is a 4 of in like every green deck, right? This card's just absurd.
Yeah, it's like the best card in the game. On it's ridiculous.
It's so good. The Dodoria the Cold Blooded, the one drop double striker, how did that work out for you?
It was decent. I only played one mirror, which is what it was for. If they already use their dormant, you can play this into their unison, and it kills it sometimes.
Okay,
Um, it was good in that one matchup. I sided it out against pretty much everything else, though.
cool. And then how come? So there's obviously a synergy with the super combo with the Bardock as well as being a one drop. But what made you choose between like Vegeta and the other like potential super combos that you could have played?
So the best thing about Vegeta to me was that I play Cell Xeno as my secret rare, and having a card that you can summon for it came up a lot with I played the 6-drop Super 17. If I had a Frieza also, this is just the last level to make 12. Um, I also, of course, the Bardock synergy is great. I summoned it on turn 1 quite a lot, and it just being another good mana sink was cool. Jiro is good, but it felt like I never really needed it. You kind of have everything in your drop always anyway.
Fair. And then you mentioned it earlier, but the Sun Gohan potential unlocked. You said you didn't like it.
Yeah, this card was terrible. The worst card in my deck by far.
Okay, so
Um,
yeah, I was like, why? Talk to me about that.
yeah, so its only effect is you can summon it for 0 if you have a 2-mana unison on the board.
Hmm.
But the problem was, in most of my games, I didn't summon Bardock, and in the ones where I did, it was only on my board for 1 turn. So it was just I didn't want to draw it in my opening hand because it's worse than Kai and Cyberman. I didn't want to draw it any time after turn 2 because I can't summon it because of Metacooler.
Hmm.
So it just had one specific window where it was good, and the one window where it was good is a play I didn't make most of the time anyways. So yeah, it just really underperformed. I think that if I played it again, I would replace them with the Zarbon from the tournament pack or Cyberman. Not sure which is better.
Cool. Next up, you have 4 copies of Master Roshi Kamehameha Origins, which also feels like a 4 of staple in green decks because this card is also a little bit of absurd, especially when combined with Dormant Potential Unleashed.
Yeah, it gets pretty much the entire strategy back, which is just Dormant and Maiden Transformation. So
Cool.
one of the
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
it's just one of the best cards available to you as this type of deck. That's it.
And then you got Ribrian Punishing Passion. I've seen builds that fluctuate between 3 copies and 4 copies. So you went with 4. Did you feel like that was too many copies for the event, or was it like perfect?
No, it was pretty good. I kind of always wanted to draw it. The card that I cut down on is the next one, which is Ape, because that one felt like the worst of the graveyard effects to me. Where like I was way more likely to want to spend 2 for a Ribrian than spend 2 for an Ape most of the time.
Okay.
So that's why it's at 4. And
And
we can
then
talk about Ape now too.
yeah,
Ape draws 2 cards. It's just worse than Ribrian, in my opinion, in this deck.
that's right. And then you played 2 copies of Son Goku Power Legend.
Yeah. This card actually didn't come up for me that much. I'm not sure how much I drew it, but yeah, like it wasn't amazing. It's just a free creature you can summon if you like rebrand them or something like that. Yeah. 2 ofs you just don't draw all that much of. So
Yeah. And also, as I say, it combos pretty well. Like if you're able to get that on the board and have the Chomp and the Furthering Destruction Chomp in hand.
yeah, that's definitely good. The second furthering was a last minute addition too. Like I'm pretty sure we added it in at the event. But it was good. Like I'm glad that I had.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Chomp is always going to be one of those cards that are just not broken, but just innately very strong, right?
Yeah, of course. Turning anything into a threat to end the game is really good.
Cool. And then we played 3 copies of Maiden Transformation.
Yeah, this was probably too many. I probably could have gotten away with playing 2 because of Master Roshi.
Mm-hmm.
But it was fine. Obviously, I activated it every game. Summoning 2 Rabanras is very strong, and making 2 20Ks is good.
Yeah, there's something about 4 mana ripping 4 cards from your opponent that seems very strong, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the Zamasu. Uh, I'm not. I mean, I like the card. It's obviously very good. I don't play it in my build, but how is it working for you?
So it was really just for the mirror
Hmm.
because your opponent can't kill it with their leader skill, and I expected there to be a lot more of this deck than there was. In the one mirror match that I played, it was probably why I won. But I only played 2 because I only wanted to summon it in the mirror. It was another card that I sided out in a lot of my matchups.
Cool. And then we have 4 copies of what's potentially the best counterplay in the game right now, which is Frieza Charismatic Villain.
Yeah, this card's great. 0 mana, popping anything. Obviously very strong.
So good. Also, it accelerates your cell numbers really quickly, which is great.
Yeah. That certainly mattered a lot.
How did the Super 17 play? How good was that in the deck?
So that card really overperformed for me.
Okay.
What I tried to do was I would play my Metacooler on 3, and then use it and the tokens to make sure that my opponent's Unison didn't have markers. And once I got Super 17 on the board, it pretty much closed out the game. It gets back a Dormant and a Maiden Transformation by attacking twice. It makes your opponent warp 2 cards from their hand. And of course, if it survives again, there's basically nothing your opponent can do. You just always have your engine in your hand every turn. So it is very fragile, but I thought that it was worth it, and I think I was right. It was really good.
Cool. And I think this card goes without mentioning, but the Seagull you played, which is undoubtedly the best card of the entire game, but Cell Zeno.
Yep. If you can summon it, you should have it in your deck, and I can summon it, so I had it in my deck. Often it would just be off of 2 activating Maiden Transformation twice and getting 12 levels there with the Rabanras. Also using Super 17, a Frieza, and a Super combo, as I think I mentioned earlier, that also came up a lot.
Nice. All right, so let's move on to the sideboard. You got some interesting stuff in there, like the Max Power Kamehameha.
Yeah. So most of these cards I never sided in because I didn't play against that many different decks.
Uh-huh.
Max Power Kamehameha was really good against Sin Shenron in my head, and also just another hard negate if I needed it. But I never sided it in.
Okay, what about the Burning Impact?
Burning Impact was for the mirror, and that card was really good. I only found out about it right before the event, but I'm very glad that I played it in the one mirror that I played. It definitely made the game 2 a blowout.
Cool. And I'm assuming the Hidden Power of the Saiyans was for the blue matchup with the Booney.
Yeah, it was probably a little bit redundant, but the time that I had it was really good. So
Cool, cool. Haru Haru, just that general toolbox card for green and yellow decks.
yeah, which there were not that many of, fortunately. But I did expect a lot of it. It was cool that it was there.
So the Arena Wrecker has its obvious like uses with Invoker, but was there any other matchups where you saw like it could potentially going in for?
Someone mentioned to me siding it in game 2 against KidKu for their Planet M2, but that never came up for me. I did play against 2 Invoker, and it was decent against that, but that is really all it was there for.
Cool. And then next up, you have the Hopeful Future package. You got 1 Disable Hopeful Future and 2 copies of Ginyu Backbone of the Force.
Yeah, so this only came in for, or was only in my side for Sin Shenron. Being able to take their 9-drop basically ends the game because your leader is just better than theirs. The cards in your deck are just better than theirs besides the 9-drop. So I'm glad that I had it. The first after Swiss was a Sin Shenron, but I didn't end up playing.
Cool. And the last card in your sideboard was 1 copy of Mira Creator Absorbed.
Yeah. I never summoned it. I had 14 cards in my side deck before the event, and you told me to put this in,
Hey,
and I did.
it felt like a decent one of, right? I mean,
Yeah. I milled it one time. That was kind of cool.
it's good to know that you settled it in. All right, so let's talk about your matchups real quick. Just go through the gauntlet. What did you play against? How did you do?
So rounds 1 and 2, I played against the starter deck Vegito leader. I 2-0'd both of them. Their builds were pretty similar. There's not really that much you can differentiate on with that deck, and its strategy is just not that good against green. The only thing that they really have that's threatening is pressure on your Unison, but as long as you can handle that, there's pretty much nothing. Round 3, I played the mirror match. I think he was playing pretty much the exact same deck as me. So normally it's really just like if your deck is better than theirs, that's how you win. I can't speak too much as to what happened. I probably just drew better than him. Yeah, but I also 2-0'd him. Round 4, which was the last round of Swiss, I played against Invoker. and that went to a draw because they only had 50-minute rounds of this tournament, so we didn't have time to finish our game 3. And in top 16, I played against another Invoker player, and that one I was able to 2-0.
Cool. So what do you think was the hardest matchup with this deck?
Certainly Invoker was the hardest matchup.
Mhm.
It feels like something of a 50-50, which is pretty good for it to be your hardest matchup. But if you they don't attack into your blockers, so it sort of stops the strategy where you're able to awaken. And because I only played 3 Bardock in the main deck, the game that I dropped to the Invoker player in round 4 was just one where I couldn't awaken the whole game. So that was a difficult game. The only game I lost in the whole tournament. Besides that, Gotenks can also be a little difficult, I've found. If they win the die roll, their 7-drop, there's kind of nothing you can do about it, unless you are set up with a Bardock and a Frieza. Besides that, every matchup felt pretty easy. There wasn't really anything in the room that this deck was bad against.
Cool. That's what we like to hear, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Sam.
I'm very glad that I took it.
Listen, me too. All right, Sam. So last question, because we're right on like the cusp of set 11 coming out, and you're a notable player. What deck are you looking forward to playing most in set 11?
I'm quite a fan of the Dark Broly deck. I feel like it does similar things to this without playing the $1 million green cards that I don't own. So yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Sam. Congratulations on your top 8 performance at the CGU 1K, and hopefully, I'm assuming you'll be going to the next one if they have one.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, best of luck at the next one. Thank you for coming on, and everybody watching, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you want to play when it comes to set 11 decks, and then we'll try and build them and get them on video for you guys to watch.